Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Meta Club. This week we've got a really weird race C, and that means we've got a weird meta car and an even weirder anti-meta car. Let's get into it. In a turn of events I never anticipated, the 155 returns as the meta car along with the Ferrari 458. In order to defeat an old meta car, I've brought another old meta car that is not the meta car this week, the WRX. There are actually three different cars that are a little bit better than this that could serve as the anti-meta car: the Intensa, the Jag, and the Citroen. The Intensa is actually faster, but I absolutely hate it. The Jag and the Citroen are both faster, but they're really unstable and there's going to be a lot of incidents. We'll get into that in a bit. Except for two Jags and a single Intensa, the only three cars that are in the top 100 are the Italia, the 155, and the Lancer. My time was only a 47.152, which is only good enough for 162nd place in the world, but since everything's so close, that's enough. Here's the setup I used, and I actually used a slightly different setup for the race that I'm going to show you at the end, but it wasn't quite different enough to warrant showing both, and this is definitely superior to that first one that I used. Since it's such a short track, the first braking zone comes up real quick. On the right, you'll see this fence, and at the very end of the tallest part of the fence, that is when we're going to start braking. Keeping your eyes at the end of the green wall, we're going to start turning in right before that. I like to turn in third gear and then further decelerate and downshift to second gear as we trail brake into the corner, making sure we don't use too much of that inside curb because it can bounce you. At the end of this white piece of outside curb on the right is when we're going to start braking and immediately trail braking in and turning in. We want to get our right tires just on the red and white part of the curbing. When you're fully off the brakes, continue to turn the wheel in and then just let it coast. You should feel the car start to rotate about halfway through the corner. When you feel that, accelerate in second gear and track out all the way to the edge, being very careful that you don't go into the grass. Even barely touching the grass here can cause you to slip out and completely ruin your lap. No brakes are needed for the next corner, but the timing is crucial. Before you get to the beginning of the curbing on the inside, you need to turn in, and after the weight has settled on the side of the car, we're going to lift off, and I like to upshift to fourth before getting on the throttle. Third can work as well, but you're saving yourself a shift, and third can slip the front tires just a little bit. It's going to be up to personal preference. Minimize all your steering inputs. You want to just barely touch that curb, stay away from the sausage curb on the inside there, and ride up a little bit on the inside curb there so you don't scrub your tires too much. When the chevrons on the left start, look for the 100 meter board, and the chevron directly after that is your braking point. The curb on the left ends pretty early, so we want to start steering a little bit to get off it, but once you're fully off it and onto the track, then we're going to downshift to second gear and fully start turning in and trail braking to the apex. Add a little bit more steering once you've come off the brakes entirely, avoid the inside sausage curb, and let those front tires pull you around the corner. Third gear will come mid-corner exit, so don't miss your upshift to third, and then it's just a straight shot to the finish line. That was quick, huh? Alright, let's go full speed. On the first corner, timing of course is really important, both for braking as well as turning in. If you go too early, you can go over the high part of that curb, and that can be done, but it's going to take practice and trial and error. If you hit it wrong, you're going to bounce. Coming out of that really short, slow corner, it's really important to make sure that you're continuing to steer after you come off the brakes because the all-wheel drive does pull you around that corner. Being a shorter challenge and a shorter track does not make it any easier. In fact, I think it amplifies the difficulty because any single mistake you make is going to last the entire lap. If you find that you brake at the exact same time that you see me do, but you're still sliding past the apex, most likely you're just turning in too early. If you start turning before the car is sufficiently slowed down, then you're just going to actually lose grip and continue sliding past the apex. Don't underestimate how long it can take to set a good lap here. Just because it's short doesn't make it easy. This was actually the very first race that I did of the entire week. I had done some lapping the night before, and I was already just pretty sure that this was going to be the anti-meta car, but after using this and then a few other cars and seeing how some cars were much faster than this, I had to do some further testing. The Evo, though not as fast as the Ferrari and the Alfa, is definitely one of the meta cars, so I couldn't choose that. The Intensa is actually a lot faster, and also being all-wheel drive, I really like it for its stability, but I absolutely can't stand driving that car, and talking with a few other people, they feel the same. Even Timmy. Even Super Chicken, the guy who usually loves that car and was setting .2s in the race, doesn't even like driving it. Both the Jag and the Citroen are actually faster, and I was actually faster lap to lap in it, but I had a lot of difficulty passing certain people, and on top of that, it was really difficult to get a clean race. There are a lot of places where people can just nudge you barely into the grass, and if you get put in the grass at the wrong part, and you're in one of the rear-wheel drive cars, you're probably going to turn around. The same thing can happen with a slight mistake. For instance, if you go too quickly into T1 and you dip two tires in the grass at the same time that you hit the brakes, If you're not in an all-wheel drive car, it's really easy just to spin out and spin around. On top of that, if you have to slow down a lot for this corner right here, the all-wheel drive cars have a lot of grip, so you can get on the throttle really early, and that can be a really big advantage against any of the rear-wheel drive cars. With all that said, the WRX is the 4th fastest of all the anti-meta choices that I was exploring, but it's more fun to drive than the Atenza, and it's safer than the Jag and the Citroen. More importantly than all of that is the strategy that you use. Now, I didn't use the most obvious good strategy here at the beginning because this was the first race and I really wanted to battle people wheel to wheel. I also saw that a lot of people were going in the pits right then, so I decided not to take a first lap pit, but it is almost always the best choice to do, especially if you're starting from the back. I'm pretty sure a lot of you don't actually start from the back on purpose, but if you're going to be using the anti-meta car, chances are you're not going to be anywhere near the front. If multiple people are using the Metacar towards the front, chances are they're going to have to battle each other a lot, and that's going to slow them down. So if you're in the back, or even mid-pack, since this is such a short track, it won't matter all that much. Interrupting my own thought real quick, you saw that I went off in the grass right there, but it just kind of slowed me down and pulled me away. The guy in front in the same car actually touched the grass as well, but he didn't slow down nearly as much as I did because of it. Either way, the absolute best strategy is to pit early, get out of everyone's way, and try to do whatever you can to find completely clean air. One final thought before we move on and actually pay attention to the race. The slipstream does matter, and it matters enough because of these two straights that if you aren't necessarily on pace, if you can stay in someone's slipstream, the dirty air probably won't slow you down that much, but the slipstream will pull you closer to them. So paying attention to the actual race itself, Hellsfire's in a Porsche, which is really impressive because that thing is pretty much just not very competitive most of the time in Group 4. But he's a very good driver. We found ourselves in 7th place, and we've got Sosa behind us. Now, this is a fake 7th place. We're only in 7th place right now because so many of the people in front of us decided to pit. The later you pit, the more chance someone has pit behind you, gotten cleaner air than you, and will overtake you by the time you come out of the pits. So protect your feelings. It's very easy to not realize how quick people are when they're on different pit strategies. So you'll find that a lot of people can end up passing you if you go in the pits late, or you can pull off the same move and pit early, hopefully get clean air, and then get in front of them when they're in the pits. Now, like I said before, the best choice is usually just to go in the pits as soon as you possibly can if you're starting from the back, or even if you're starting from the middle. But each time we were about to go in the pits, there were multiple people going in, which meant that if we took the chance and maybe went on the next lap, we might end up with clean air. Now, with only a world-class driver in front of us and another one right behind us, we didn't have to worry too much about what would happen if we went in the pits now. We could also safely stay out because we have Hellsfire in front and Sosa behind, so again, surrounded by people with really good pace, there's no real reason to go into the pits unless it seems like our pace is suffering from being behind Hellsfire like this. Jumping forward a full 6 laps, we can see that Hellsfire has almost caught up to K Wells, and if he ends up battling him and then I get stuck in the middle of that, that could slow all of us down, so people who would already pit, who have clean air, could then have the advantage against us since we hadn't pit yet. In case you didn't know, you don't need to do absolutely anything in the pits. You aren't going to need fuel, and you definitely don't need tires. Even with a tire-eating machine like the WRX, it doesn't matter whatsoever in this race. Click away from both options, and then you'll be on your way after this really quick animation. So coming out of the pits, not really knowing what to expect, we did have clean air for long enough that we actually have a very real 7th place. Now, that is at least 7th place. If we are within 18 seconds of anyone ahead who then wants to pit, then we will be either right next to them or in front of them by the time they come out. Jumping to lap 12, K Wells was just about 18 seconds ahead, so when he comes out of the pits, we're right on his tail. I didn't really know what to expect, so I actually slowed down too much, and that brought Sosa even closer to me, which meant that I was going to have to defend, and I made another mistake there, so it was pretty much inevitable that Sosa was going to be able to put on a move right here. If you're not familiar with Sosa, his name is Sam Kindle, as you can see from S Kindle behind, and he's going to Barcelona in just about 1 week to compete in the World Finals. I'm very proud of you, Sosa. I really wanted to show this part because I make another huge mistake. I wasn't used to the overspeed and I braked too late anyways, and Sosa went for a move. And the reason I'm showing this is because I think it was just a really fun battle with Sosa, but I'm going to show you how I decided to defend as well as how I ended up going for a move later on. So since I went too deep, Sosa was then ahead of me, but on this corner, you can go extremely late, and as long as you get in front of them, you can just completely take the line. Staying in the inside is superior, though him on the outside, he did have the opportunity to get on the throttle earlier, so he was able to maintain more speed and stay next to me. As I turned in, I actually made the mistake of going up on the curb and giving him too much space. I didn't need to, but since I did, he was able to take it, and he is still completely next to me. Having not forgotten the last lap, I was going to make sure that I brake on time, and he's definitely going to brake a little bit later, but he's doing that deliberately because he's automatically going to take a wider line anyway, so he can afford to brake later and carry more speed through there, which is exactly what he did. You can see him accelerating a lot faster next to me because he did carry more average speed and get on that throttle earlier since he was on the outside. Since I don't want him to pull off the same move that I did, I'm going to brake really late and just try to carry more speed even though I'm going to have a much slower exit. That makes him slow down a little bit more than I would have to, and I was able to turn in really early and then fully take my position back. In Sosa's defense, he always drives really nice against me because I gave him a lot of crap for running me off the road once, even though it wasn't his fault. And on top of that, I did a lot of practice for this and he didn't do any. I think in most cases, Sosa would have taken me pretty easily back there. Jumping forward to lap 16, I've finally gotten close enough to K-Wells to start putting on some pressure. The thing about the 155 is that it accelerates incredibly fast. I haven't actually driven it this week, but from what I know about the car, it definitely doesn't handle nearly as well as the WRX, but the acceleration is enough to make up for that. With that in mind, the only opportunity I really have to try to pass him is to brake really deep into a corner or get a really good exit and use the slipstream on either of the two straights. Positioning myself for the pass like this, I have no overlap and I'm too far behind without any more speed. So what I'm planning on doing is just hoping that the pressure gets to him, and I'm not actually sure if that's what happened or if he just let me go, which does happen sometimes, but either way I was able to get in front and then I maintained it. I talk about this from time to time, but positioning yourself like you're going to go for a pass without actually going for a crazy dive bomb can sometimes convince people that you are going to go for a dive bomb, and then they make mistakes or just give space. Now, it seems like a really ridiculous thing to just make people think you're going to dive bomb, but I think that I have a good enough relationship with K-Wells that he knows I'm not going to do something really stupid. So any kind of pressure that I put on isn't going to be the kind of pressure that make people think I'm going to ram them. It's just, I'm going for a move, maybe, maybe not, and that thought right there can cause people to make mistakes. Jumping forward to the end of the penultimate lap, we can see the last opportunity for the front four people to then go into the pits. Fourth place had already gone to the pits. Cal Naughton, Hellsfire, and Lead Pencil hadn't, but I didn't realize that Lead Pencil was not quite 18 seconds ahead of me. All in all, there wasn't actually a lot of on-track action, and that's exactly how you want it if you want to win or just do really good in one of these races. When I stream, I really like to make races exciting and try to go wheel to wheel with as much people as possible, but I knew that I was also filming for this series, so I just went for the safest strategy and it really worked out. Fourth place, and again we're back on Hellsfire's tail, which meant that we both ended up pitting at the right time and getting clean air. A wise driver once said that you're going to save more time in the pits than you ever could actually on track, and he didn't actually mean this specific strategy, but in general, it's the best idea and it's always true. So to reiterate for this week, your goal is to just find a time to go in the pits when no one else around you is, get as much clean air as you can, and just set the best, most consistent laps that you possibly can. As always, thank you very much for watching my video. If you like what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll be making another one of these guides every week. Thank you.